Uh, good afternoon, everyone. To my senior members, colleagues, and everyone joining this webinar. I, CA Khimraj Prajapat, welcome you all to this 24th series of webinar conducted by the Committee of Member in Practice of ICAI. Under the leadership of our Honorable President, Sir CA Ranjit Kumar Agrawal, Sir, Vice President, Sir CA Charanjot Singh Nanda, Sir, and our Chairman, Sir CA Rohitji Rugatia, and Vice Chairman CA Umesh Sharma, Sir. Our committee has done immense work for upliftment and growth of member of practices of our ICAI. CMP committee is already doing very hard work and providing us various tools like audit tools, practice management softwares, and conducting various seminars for growth of our members and providing knowledge. So, Rohit sir. So today we have our eminent speaker, CA Rahul Lakhwani ji, sir. Sir doesn't need any introduction, but because sir has given various seminar and we have already met sir in various seminar. But for brief introduction, I would like to introduce and welcome our eminent speaker, uh, Advocate Rahul Lakhwani ji is a law graduate and fellow member of ICAI and also member of ICSI since 2010. He is currently practicing as an advocate at Rajasthan High Court. He is senior partner in Chair Amrit Legal LLP and heads the taxation division of the firm. He regularly appears before various writ courts and appellate forum. He is also involved in advisory and consultancy services like tax planning, departmental proceedings, and due diligence to various corporate and government agencies. He has contributed articles to reputed journals such as Tax India Online, CA Journal ICI, CA Journal Jaipur Chapter, etc. He has given several presentations on indirect taxation at ICI branch Jaipur, ICI Udaipur, Kota, Sikar, Jaipur, etc. So we are honored to have you, sir, on this platform for sharing your valuable knowledge and deep insights of indirect taxation. Sir, please.
Thank you so much, Chemraj. I hope I'm audible, clear?
Yeah.
Great. So first of all, I would like to thank the Professional Development Committee of the ICI, wherein they are taking up this initiative and trying to make sure that members in practice may learn more and more. So that's very, I would say, important for any professional to keep themselves updated. And I tell you the area and topic which I'm going to cover now, something very important because there's a larger trade industry which is getting impacted on account of the this GST implementation. And I tell you frankly, even though the GST was implemented in 2017, but now it has started showing its colors because the department has become very much aggressive in terms of making sure that the reason and the I would say the purpose or the idea of GST with which it was implemented should be bring on the ground. So that would be my idea to take up. And I would also like to thank my dear friend Rohit, who has invited me for this seminar, and he particularly requested me saying that I would like that I, being a CA turned lawyer, have an experience of seeing the judicial side of these GST matters as well as the department side of these matters. So he requested me that why we should not be taken up in a manner wherein the members at large can understand the ramification and accordingly they can strategize and can give best advisory to their clients. So with that idea, he has invited me, and I hope I would try to make it to his expectation in a very well manner because when you are saying this 24th series, Khimraj, correct? That's a 24th session.
Yeah, sir, it's 24th. Yeah.
Great. So I understand there must be regular listeners of this podcast of yours. I can call it like this because when you are having it in a series manner, there are regular audience who wanted to attend it. And even though that's a working Friday, so I understand sometimes it's a challenge, but let's see. That's benefited, and this recorded video may also help them to have learning later on this point. So let me start with the technical topic of mine, which has been given to me. And for that, Shimla, you just need to confirm me whether my screen is visible not to you. I'm just resuming the slideshow. Is it appearing to you?
Not now, sir.
My screen is appearing to you?
No, no.
No, not now. Just a second. Let me see on this. Just a second. Okay, I have to share screen first. Screen sharing, and I hope so now it is
Yeah,
appearing.
now it's visible.
Great. Now my screen full slide is appearing to you, correct?
Yeah.
Okay. So how to handle menace of fake invoicing under GST? That would be my topic. And prior to it, I would like to start and take some background. So when it comes to GST practice, I advise to all my friends that please categorize and where you wanted to place yourself. So there are majorly three identified areas. One is compliance, second is advisory, and third is litigation. When you talk about any tax practice, so I always advise to my friends in profession that you should be clear that where you are placing yourself. Because many times people think, or better to say, try to look into that compliance is not a very niche area of practice. But my answer to that is your if you think like this is truly incorrect. I would explain with some of the examples where my friends doing practice in compliance and doing it in flying colors will definitely explain with some examples. But the important thing that they are clear. They are clear that from these three areas, compliance, advisory, litigation, where they are placing, it can be two areas also, but they are clear in that thought process. And if you can have someone who can do all the three with your team, because that cannot be done alone, that can be done with a team, that's a great thing to do with respect to any tax law. So when I say these three, what are they? So to begin with compliance. So when I talk about compliance, the law provides very clearly that, okay, these are certain things you are required to do. It can be maintenance of record, it can be filing of return, it can be making invoices in a particular manner, it can be taking up the task of preparing e-way bills, it can be the task of, I would say, preparation of books of accounts, anything. Then that practice area or that services majorly fall under the head compliance. However, I people when talk about compliance, they say that ये तो सर बहुत ही simple सा काम है इसमें है क्या? But that's not the case. Let me tell you. I know by way of information technology and AI tools and softwares, you can actually change the ball game. And how you can change the ball game? Let me tell you. Let me give you the one of the example. I know my some of my chartered accountant friends who are based out at Pune, and what kind of activities they are doing. They are actually making a they have made a platform where they have made the compliance work automated, and then they are charging on the basis of per invoice what they are processing. So what they do, so we all understand that with every invoice there is an e-way bill required. Now let's take a think for that. There's a factory which has a 24 hours running, and when it has a 24 hours running, it's necessary that there need to be a e-way bill person available to make it and do the compliance of invoicing, so that the trucks which are there in the factory, which are 24 by 7 moving out from the factory premises, may be duly document compliant. Now that requires a person's cost, and that too to 24 by 7, because that cannot be done by an ordinary factory person. There are certain procedures have to be followed. So they came out with a very great idea. They said, sir, there's no need to worry, we will make a automated back office wherein what we would do, we would be having a team of say 20 accountants headed by a chartered accountant. And what their task would be, their task would be you just send them the a basic performer with a kind of a app, mobile app, the basic details, and they are going to prepare the e-way bill, they are going to prepare e-invoice, and they are going to prepare invoice for you, and that would be handed over to the truck driver who is there at that particular point of time and taking away the goods. Now, by that, what they have done, they have actually made the procedural part a SOP, and then by use of technology, they have streamlined that process. And to my all fellow members, they are charging per processing invoicing fees at 1 rupee or 2 rupee. And in the very first year, they have been able to get a good amount of valuation of their company, and that's a startup idea what they have registered. Now with that background, when a person start thinking about the compliance exercise, they can actually made a wonderful setup. So that is when people say me that the compliance and this kind of practice, I frankly tell them that, so you need to understand what does compliance mean and how you are going to automate, and then you can create a platform and make the things easy. But if you try to do something on a manual basis, then what you are doing, you are actually, because see, per hour cost of a chartered accountant is very high. And even though when he would hire a team, that would not be a very I would say cheaper team. So what he can do, he can make the systems in place and then get the system to work for you, and then earn the margin of the human cost, which is the difference. And that's how the AI is going to work in future. Now coming on the second idea of advisory. Now herein a little, I would say, you have to move more towards reading and understanding the law, even though that's little lesser in comparison to litigation. But advisory is a practice wherein if you had a compliance team doing that, and then there's a tricky issue comes into picture, then you enter into advisory area. Now advisory majorly consists of giving an opinion with respect to a particular transaction. Say it can be a classification issue, it can be an issue with respect to whether this particular transaction is taxable or not, or you can talk about valuation. And for this, what is required, and I otherwise also say that you need to keep always yourself updated with the latest circulars, notifications which are coming into place, because under the GST law, when there is a law which is new in development, then always you have an idea to get more in terms of advisory as a practice area. uh, I tell you, when this 52nd GST Council meeting happened, there was a lot number of queries we received, because on account of 52nd GST Council meeting, there were various issues which Council highlighted and they have to be get implemented. Now there were various clarification were issued, so we were continuously getting the queries from the my fellow members who were advising me, who were requesting me to give advice upon. Okay, if this is the interpretation given by 52nd GST Council meeting in a form of a circular, then how it has to be in place and what tax treatment we have today. And otherwise also, whenever there's a new law and there are no judgments on it. So why I would say there are no judgments, because there are various issues which has not been still dealt in by the courts. The tribunal is yet to be formulated and take place, even though that's on a very advanced stage. But yes, unless that is not there and there are issues which have been settled and there are reportable judgments, the advisory practice will always boom. Why? Because then you have to make out a view not on the basis of settled judgments. You have to make your own view from various other available legislation. So that's again a niche area of practice. If advisory you can develop, and it always can be developed parallelly to the compliance. So advisory, I take out it on one side as an opinion work. Now there's another side of it. The another side is doing a health check of your clients. So as we all know, that department these days is carrying out audits, and when it comes to audit, they come on the premises of the assessee and try to do various compliances and try to check on various points, and then on that basis they try to make out a thing that okay, all these pointers are there, all these issues are there. Now, all those issues, if being identified by the department, may lead to a tax cost as well as interest and penalties. Whereas, if you on your own have carried out an exercise of your client, wherein you have do department audit in a form of text health check and give them a detailed report. Okay, these are all the problems. Here we are will not be do the checking of compliances. We are here in to identify, okay, you have not complied and that's our report. So you can, I know all those corporates who are, or better to say, all those business houses who are having a turnover of more than 10 crore rupees are very willing to do, because when the audit team approaches, they identify something and that leads to a challenges to them, and that's why they come approach us and say that okay, kindly get us a pre-audit done. And with this pre-audit, they are being hands off with all those challenges areas of their their documentation correct, they can take care of those things so that when the audit team comes, they are very well prepared. So that also I count as an area of advisory, which again had a good practice development if you are really willing to flourish your practice under the GST law. So one is opinion, another is tax health and tax advisory. Apart to this, I would also say there's a lot of advisory which you can do in terms of identifying value addition to the client where there are input tax credit leakages, or there are refunds which have not been processed and there's an input tax credit which has been accumulated. So these kind of advisory where you can earn a little penny more for your client. Because see, if I just explain you with an example, if there's an input tax credit which is available to the client, but on account of not having a correct advice on that, and he put it into P&L, actually for every 1 rupee which goes in the P&L, he's leaving 70. He's having an outflow of 75 paisa, because otherwise it would be allowed as an expenses under income tax law. 70 after tax, the cost comes to 75 paisa, which he is losing. I have been advising to various clients, particularly I tell you in terms of who are entering into a transaction of rental of property. We have advised to them and let them know that even a building, because otherwise what the normally accountants do, they put everything in the head of building or in whole property, and because of that they end up losing various kind of input tax on it. If there is a project which is being developed for the purpose of further renting, then I have always advised them that kindly bifurcate each and every item and try to put it in a proper head while doing accounting. This would make you entitled for a lot of amount of input tax credit, which otherwise you might not have been taken care of. Or at the advisor stage, you can also guide them that how to make up your contracts, by which what you can do, you can actually plan out your affairs in a manner which is permissible under the law. I'm using the term planning because by that you can do, you can eventually make the contracts in a manner how the department will give a favorable finding to you tomorrow if there are any litigation comes into picture. Once given your background of the advisory area where it can be involved and developed, I'm coming on the litigation part. Now, litigation I normally divided into two parts. These days, when we say that this matter is going into High Court, that matter is going to High Court. Actually, when I talk about High Court, it is majorly a writ jurisdiction which goes to the High Court. All those judgments which are being pronounced in the writ court. Yes, being a chartered accountant, we are not allowed to practice, or better to say, the advocates can only practice at the High Court level. But I tell you, it's important that whether you are understanding the problem of the client and giving them a proper advisory or not, and how to pursue litigation. Because let's me take up with one of the example which we have taken up at the High Court level, again referred to by my good chartered accountant friend. So Section 16, subsection 4 was there is a section which creates a bar in terms of availing input tax credit after a certain particular date. Now the problem was with various business during the initial year of implementation of GST, they have missed those deadlines given under the law. Now, if you go and approach to the department, it happens that they ask you that, okay, we can't help you out anyway because you have missed the deadline which is given under the law. Then we try to impress upon that for the financial year 18-19, practically what the government has done, for 18-19, they have curtailed the limit till only September or say 20th October. Whereas for years after 2021, they have given the date of 30th November. Now, we under the constitutional provision calls it discrimination. Discrimination, why? Because you are for the financial year 17, 18, 18, 19, you are creating a relief by extending those dates, but you are doing again it for financial year 2021 onwards. What about those people which are 1920 and during the middle period, during 1819, 1920, when they are in those years, then why this relief is not available to them? This is what we call discrimination. We approached the High Court, and the matter, even though was still pending, but recently the government has taken cognizance of this thing because the counsel of the department admitted in the court saying that we are going to take up this issue because judge also said that this is clear-cut discrimination. I will quash the law, and to that the council promised that okay, we are going to take it to the GST council, the appropriate body, instead of court passing some order and doing something, we will take up there. And 52nd GST council meeting, that relief has been granted. So when I talk about litigation, there you being a chartered accountant, it is always necessary that you advise them what is the appropriate course of action to understand that okay, whether a writ route can be taken up on that or whether a department route can be taken on that. To my friend Rohit, I would be advising on that also, that there is a lot necessity that our chartered accountant friends who are very serious about practicing in tax laws should get an idea that okay, When and what matters, the red code can be approached. And in what matters, you have to go through the department route. Because once given them that clarity, they would be able to make up a wise decision in advising to the client. Because at the end of the day, what is required that your client should get the requisite release. It's necessary that from which platform it can get, and if a chartered accountant who's advising to them is aware about that area, it will definitely help them to have a retention of that client also and gaining confidence also of that client. So litigation, when I was talking about, I'm dividing into two areas. One area is definitely what I have discussed, that there is a red code, but at the very same time, there is a lot of department practice which has been started nowadays, because 17, 18 time limit has already passed. 18, 19 time limits will be closing in this month. So this 17, 18, 18, 19, 19, 20 time limits are coming, and the department is very aggressive in terms of what? In completing all those time bar show cause notice exercises being delivered to the respective assessees, and accordingly the take the decision. So now litigation practice, if I talk about your regular client for whom you are doing compliances, if they are getting a notices from the department, and the strategically things can be moved out. So the department practice is there, and now I, even though appellate bodies, the first appellate authority is available therein, and with the emergence of the tribunal in most of the states, there also there's a lot of practice area which is available. So, given you a background that how you can evolve your practice in the GST law in these three divisions, I would be taking up now my technical area. And to start with that, let me start in a very simple manner. These days, under GST law, we all hear on the WhatsApp groups where we are connected, or in the newspapers, or even though has been taken various times to a discussion at the council level also, that under the GST law, is this happen that these news of arrest has increased a lot? Every day we will see on the newspaper that there is something coming up on arrest. I just take you through some of the media limelights what I have been able to see on a last couple of days, and on a regular basis they keep on coming. Some is of 2022, some is of 2023. Yes, there are some matters where professional friends of ours have also been into some kind of challenges on this. So these regular news and media highlights are there. Now, why this is because under GST the doing evasion exercise is easier. My answer to this is no. Under GST law, we hear the news of arrest a lot. The reason behind that is under GST law, the technology based setup which has been created is actually, I would say, unearthing, or better to say, digging out all these moles who were hiding in light of that law, in light of no, I would say, across the country backbone, wherein the data was exchanged and were taking advantage. Whereas under the GST law, on account of GST and network, on account of backbone of GST, they have been able to be, I should say, dig out, and accordingly a view can be taken that okay, these people are doing some kind of challenges and problems. Now let me explain how this GST is helping in identifying all those people who are involved in tax evasions, and what kind of tax evasion we are talking about. So first of all, control over traders of central investigation agencies. So, one thing which I would be frankly admitting on this platform, that there are two different set of officers when it comes to in terms of tax compliance, because under GST law, the state officers who is a collection who do the collection mechanism of VAT under the erstwhile law, and the central officers who are doing collection of excise and service tax under the erstwhile law have been given a common law to be implemented, and the methodology of the traders interacting with them, that is the GSTN platform, is also very common. Now I tell you, earlier there was one challenge. The way and the style of working of state agencies was quite different than what how the central agencies used to function, because central agencies can have access of more data, and also there is a lot of reference they get on account of investigation at the central level, because just to the interest of the audience, uh, there is a financial intelligence unit working under the Ministry of Finance, and that's long been there. And the idea of this financial intelligence unit is what? that to dig out all those data where the transactions are moving in those accounts which are dormant, or better to say there is an income mismatch in terms of the PAN number when linked to a particular account and the same PAN number when linked to the income tax return of that person, there's a quite mismatch. So this financial intelligence unit gathers that data and create a, I would say, a initiating exercise. Now, this financial intelligence unit data earlier was not available to the state authorities, and I tell you, it may not be possible also to have it for the reason because that is again a central driven exercise, not a state driven exercise where directly RBI and banks provide them data. Second thought is when I talk about when the goods are which are manufactured from a factory and they move to the wholesaler, from wholesaler onwards, the jurisdiction comes with the state authorities because wholesaler is a trader of goods. The excise authorities were not having any tap on that. When it comes to the dealers, sub dealers, or retailers, they all were under the purview of VAT. And when they were under the purview of VAT, it was only and only the state agencies who were looking into. And again, so if there is any transaction which is where it has one of its leg outside the state, then they cannot administer that because tax evasion many times can be planned by way of having advantage of a country like India where there is a huge geographical difference and the goods are freely movable from the one state to another. However, there's a tax evasion which is possible by way of making an interstate movement of goods. But because every state authority, even though they are aware of it, they cannot reach to other states and can identify, okay, their tax evaders are there also. Now, with this traders also coming into the purview of Central Investigation Agency, who have a all over India jurisdiction, the things have changed a lot. So this has given them a lot of advantage by which what they are doing, they are actually tapping all those traders who are doing the tax evasion exercise. Second is centralization of tax administration. Now, I would say centralization of tax administration in a manner. See, you have your range offices at every place. They are majorly concerned with registration or refunds or any kind of technical issues in terms of return filing. Those all things are being handled by the range offices. But I tell you, under the GST law, there are specialized bodies who just do work of investigation and taking action such as search seizure based upon that investigation report. Now, I would like to highlight it like this. There's one set of officers who are just simply implementation of the law. The other one are doing the tax, doing an exercise wherein tax evasion can be found out. So these four bodies which I have highlighted, that there's an anti-evasion in center, then there's an anti-evasion or enforcement in state, then there's a Director General GST Intelligence as a center body, and then there's a state DRIs. These four bodies are there in each of the state wherein they do just a work of what tax, identifying the tax evasion and accordingly holding them person responsible and recovery of tax along with the arrest exercise. Now, when you have specialized agencies carrying out this work and they are having access of more and more data and access of data across the country, definitely they can give up very good results. So this is what is being done now because earlier, see, there was a division. There was a division that where the excise officer, even though some identified, he would restrict himself only to the excise law. Or the state officer has find out something, he will restrict himself to the VAT law because he doesn't have jurisdiction. Now, being a common law, both the authorities are administrating a single law. And when that is happening, that's easier for them to identify and trace out all those tax evaders. Now, the third point which I would like to discuss is use of data analysis by the GSTN portal. Now, when I talk about the GSTN portal, I am touching up a point wherein my various friends say that it's very difficult for them to have an interaction with GSTN portal, and they had a nightmares at a point of time when the GST was implemented that many times GST portal is not working, and because of that they have to spend the hours over it. And but now this phase has been passed out. Now, I would like to put up first of all, what is GSTN? GSTN is actually a backbone of, I would say, the Indian business for the purpose of interacting with the department, GST department. Now, why so I'm saying? So we all must have heard about ERP, Enterprise Resource Programming, what we call it. And normally this is there in all those big entities which have multiple locations of doing business, and there are multiple users with multiple interest area. So there can be a person who is sitting at the factory who is required to look into the as a stockist charge. There is a person who is in the procurement in charge. He would be given a login ID. There would be a person who's from finance side. He would be given a login ID, and a different set of function he would be exercising. But the idea is to collate all the information at a single place and have that data integrated. Now, I would say GSTN portal is an ERP of the country. And when I say ERP of the country, what I wanted to say in here, that all the businesses who are doing any sort of business activity are linked with the GSTN portal. And every business transaction which is happening in this country is being feeded into this system. Why? Because that's the requirement under the law that on a regular basis you have to do it. I am very hopeful down the line 5 years, there would be a case wherein the invoicing itself will start from the GSTN portal. That you will be said that, okay, if you want to make an invoice to do a business, you have to do it from the GSTN portal. Right now, that is partially there. We have a e-invoicing concept, and that is limited to certain number of associates who are bigger in size. We have a e-way system where every transaction before movement is being reported directly to the government portal, because once it is reported at the end of the month, that doesn't make any sense. If you have transferred the goods without having information to the department, the tax evasion can happen. So they have made an e-way bill portal when each and every data is being purged. Now, I don't see it to be a time of say 5 years or 3 years, and they are in the planning of it. That if e-invoicing e-way bill portal gets merged and the data is directly infused into the GST and GSTR1 return. So that would be simply what checking. Boss, you have done it. You have made your declared your e-way bill supplies and you have declared your e-invoicing. What we have to do with your return? We just send that data in GSTR and the things would finish it up for you. And similarly, the person who has supplied to you, he would put up that data and that would be directly come to your GSTR2 already we have, 2B already we have, and they are going to make it that robust that your return will be prepared. Now, actually, it must have been ready by the time GST was implemented in 2017 because that was the ideology of the government. But here we have some systems wherein I normally tell it that we all were a kind of lab rats, wherein what the department did, they were not ready. They just had a simple beta testing, and that too, I have attended some beta testing of the department, all formality. They said that, okay, punch some data. It was never tested on the live environment. And 4 to 5 years they took in live environment. And now the things have been smoothened out. And smoothened out like anything that, yes, now we are ready. Wherein an officer sitting in Jaipur can trace each and every transaction which is happening across the country. If you they have been given those portals wherein by just putting in data on the just putting the GSTI number, all the persons who have bought from it and sold from that data is available. And more to that, what that person has for the movement of the good, that is also available. So just think of that while sitting herein, they can trace that data of the across the country. So it's very easy for them to identify eventually where the tax evasion is being done or what kind of, I would say, wrong reporting is being done at the portal level. And additionally, I tell you, it's no more of time. It's only a matter of time, say 2 to 3 years, where we are going to see that this GSTN portal gets directly linked with the income tax portal, gets directly linked with the portal of the customs department, because shipping bill also has a PAN number IEC code by which it can be verified that okay, what you have exported is whether being reported under GST return or not. So once you will make a shipping bill, all the details will automatically get captured into the GSTN portal. And finally, eventually, what is required that has to be linked with your bank account. Okay, if he is saying this much amount of transaction, this bank account has to be returned. So once this integration exercise is being taken up, I am of a view that we will have a very different set of ball game in the country in future in terms of tax evasions. It will be a very difficult exercise of non-reporting a transaction and doing a tax evasion, because they are going to make sure that okay, what you report, you can't take an advantage that there's a different reporting under income tax or customs and different reporting under GST law. All have to be systematized on a single place. So, and how it can happen, because all have a common thread. The common thread is your PAN number. When you have seen that GSTN is your PAN based, you have a PAN record under Income Tax Department PAN name, your bank account is PAN based, your Aadhaar of the directors of the companies or others have been linked with the GSTN portal as well as your bank account. So this is a very simple thing by which it can be integrated. Okay, we can have a by just on a click, every data will come into at a single place. So this data analysis thing has become possible on account of GST portal, but otherwise earlier it was not. Earlier a person is something reporting under VAT on a portal which has been formulated by the state government. It is not necessary that there can be a possible integration between the GST portal, that VAT portal and the income tax department portal, because every state government makes portal as per its own choices, and also it's impossible to have that integration between the income tax department portal and the GST portal. Now we have only two portals in the country. One is income tax department portal and there is the GST department portal. Integrating both of them is a very simple task. So minded to all those who are listening to this discussion, that you have to think how the government is thinking. Now, moving it further, I have already discussed it that GST income tax. Now, in the coming time, the enforcement directorate wing also has a just to highlight to all those who are having those clientele, wherein they have implication under the different laws. I am aware of that on a quarterly basis, the highest state officials of GST, state and center, income tax, and the enforcement director sits on a single table and try to do what? Try to do a coordination between them in terms of any data what they have extracted and try to share that information with each other. And the idea of sharing that information is what? That by sharing of this information, they help each other in identifying their respective areas of evasions. So if say that a search has happened done by the income tax department at a place of a builder, and they are able to find out, okay, this builder has taken some amount in cash. So they will share the data with GST department. Okay, what GST department is going to do? GST department is going to identify, okay, this much amount of cash is being done. Let's compute the amount of tax GST which would have been payable on this, and let's do our exercise. But at the very same time, department, the enforcement directorate comes into picture. Why? Because they find out that okay, this book, where the undisclosed transactions are recorded, has name of some of the politicians, some of the bureaucrats, some of the members who are holding statutory positions, government positions, and they say, "Oh, that's the case. Then why we cannot initiate proceedings?" And they are doing it these days. That on the basis of data which is available to the income tax department, they being a person who is responsible under the PMLA Act to have take care of the schedule officers wherein the bribery comes into picture. They say or public servant code act comes into picture. So they use that. So they use that thing for the purpose of what? For the purpose of identifying, okay, all this exercise can be carried out. So this sharing of data between the GST income tax enforcement directorate and also to the highest level of police officers also. I would say, while discussing my further slide, I will give one example wherein the a very senior superintendent of police of a particular district came to know that there's a misuse of Aadhaar because a complaint was launched at the police station that there's a misuse of Aadhaar, and when they further digged out, they find out that this Aadhaar is being misused by way of creating fake companies in the GST vision being done, and finally, because that's a 420 crime also under IPC, or there is a crime under the Aadhaar provisions, and there is a crime under the Information Technology Act, for which the police officer is the authority to take an action. So what they did, they after making out a case on their own, they handed over everything to the GST department, and finally the GST department was able to find out that it's a evasion of more than 100 crores of rupees, which is coming into account of by using those fake invoices. So no one has ever imagined that on account of this investigation may give you a data wherein the GST department may use it as a tip for the purpose of further investigation. That's what the size we are talking about. Now, the next thing is the registration verification drive. This is also going on. Many of my friends came to me and asking that whether they can come and ask us about the registration. We said that yes, they have it right, because technically you have to show the premises, your board, that okay, you are carrying out this business activity and this is your GST number, that is have to be prominent displayed at a very prominent location. So if you are not doing that, that will take you to some problem. Now, we are coming on the e-way bill portal, as I have explained, and also it includes invoicing portal, wherein See, the challenge with the goods is what I tell you how the tax evasion in terms of goods happens. That I have some goods which I have to supply to say a dealer sitting in the other state. So earlier, what used to happen? I make up an invoice, and that paper invoice I hand it over to the transport agency and say that someone catches you on the site, then show him this invoice. He said, okay, let me take this. He takes up that invoice. If someone comes on the way, they show them this invoice and say that, see, this invoice is there. And okay, fine, I can proceed. Yes, you can proceed. And that person proceeds and reaches to the other place. And what they do, they throw away that invoice and declare that, okay, the goods have been reached. Now there is no need of this invoice because the reporting will be done at the end of the month. And then by the end of the month, if that bill book gets torn away, you can't find out, okay, whether that invoice which was shown to the person who was sitting at the check naga is still in existence or not. To take care of that, the help of the technology has been done. E-way bill portal basically tracks the transaction which happens at the inception. Because as soon as you have to start a movement of goods, you have to report it there. And once you report it, the officer in the on the who is on the way can check it. Now, once the movement of goods stands completed, that movement of goods cannot be deleted. Why? Because that has been reported online on a portal, and this has to be shown in your GSTR1 return. And if it is not there on the GSTR1 return, sure, there's going to be a big problem to you. So this integration exercise is very helpful for identifying the tax evasion. And this e-way bill portal is actually taking care of one lacuna which was there in the existing law. Now, these media limelights have already covered, and let me take up on a discussion wherein I would be entering into some technical area and I will be explaining with the possible examples. Now, this first thing which I have put up on the slide is arrest versus prosecution. Now, to all my friends, I would like to highlight that these terms, even though used alternatively, but actually are very different. Now, I just request everyone to have a thinking on their own that, okay, what is the difference between arrest and prosecution? I would be explaining it. So, arrest and prosecution, if you talk about, one is a primary and other is the conclusive activity. Now, what is primary activity? So, arrest is the primary activity, and why it is carried out. So, to put it like this, that there's an officer who has to investigate and he has a reason to believe. There's a term, reason to believe, which we'll discuss in further slides. It's very important to start a case that there's a reason to believe there's a tax evasion of more than an amount of rupees 5 crore. Now, the person who is involved in this matter need to be investigated. Now, if when the department will call that person and if he's aware about the fact that, okay, there's some investigation going on against me, what he would do? He would try to destroy all the possible evidences which are there in the matter, or there are high chances that he may also run away. Because he will say that I have done this crime and then it's better I run away and I might not be found. So power is available to the officer to carry out a preventive action in the form of arrest, wherein a person is taken up in his custody and he has been taken into the judiciary and requested that, see, the investigation is going on. We need a time of say 60 days to carry out that investigation because that is statutorily provided under the law. After the end of 60 days, we will be filing our charge sheet. So prior to that, we want this person to be in judicial custody. And why it has to be in judicial custody? Because we are worrisome that this person may do something and destroy the evidences which are going to help us in the investigation. Unfortunately, people treat this arrest as the final conclusion. That, okay, person has been arrested, he's in jail, and this is the final conclusion. He has done the GST chori, because how this our news and media reports also portray. But actually, that's not the case. That's only a preventive exercise being done, and eventually, if a person is found guilty, then the prosecution will come into picture. And prior to that, what he is a right, he can approach to the court and request for a bail. And bail on account of what? Saying that I am giving an affidavit, I am giving an undertaking that what I would do, I would make sure that I would be available inform of any kind of support required, and I assure that I will not do any kind of tampering with the evidences. I am available to provide any kind of document you are required. So kindly don't put me behind the bars, and I am giving this verdict. And the court find yes, this person is of that nature, and also the all the documents available on the record, they cannot be taken here and there. Based upon that, they give the relief. Now, when I talk about the prosecution, prosecution is an exercise wherein the trial goes on, evidences are taken on record, and finally it is concluded, no, this person is guilty and he need to be put behind bars. I am dealing with all these matters since 2017. The person who was arrested in 2017 still have not been prosecuted. I tell you why? Because it is a lengthier exercise which has to be carried out, and for that you need specialized judicial magistrates also who should have an idea about all these economic offences are about. However, that will take some time and its own course of action. But to all those my professional friends, this should be clear that arrest and prosecution are not the very same terms. They are different, and we should be appreciate upon and understand okay how this exercise works upon. Now, one section is appearing on your screen where the commissioner has reason to believe. So this is very important term which I would like to discuss a little. Why? Because this is not only reason to suspect. There are actually two terms: reason to suspect and reason to believe. Post that, only this exercise can be carried out. So, what does reason to believe? Technically, there is a definition which has been given under the law, which says that the opinion should be recorded that there is a reason to believe that this person might be doing some tax evasion, and this should not be only a kind of thinking. It should be reasonable enough that where a person of prudence will make up a call, yes, this person might be found, might be of guilty of this act upon, and for this reason, they held him guilty, saying that yes, there is a reason to believe that this person is carried out this activity, and accordingly, they have to make a note. Now, many times my friend asked me that whether this reason to believe which has been made out by the officer can be challenged. My answer is literally, if you go straight, very strict interpretation, no, you cannot have access to that, and it is not a challengeable exercise. However, if you are very sure that okay, there is no link and this has been done with some ill intent, then yes, definitely writ court can be approached. And in that matters, what writ court do? They call for the evidences, they examine, they call for the file in which the reason to believe are recorded. They make a study of it, and based upon that study, they make out that okay, whether that is correct or not. No, they don't give you a copy, but they on their own make out. Yes, there was sufficient reason to believe available on the file, and based upon this action has been taken. This is very well which can be executed, and accordingly let the things move further. Now, this reason to believe can be understood by way of some examples. Say there is a person who had been implicated and arrest warrant has been taken out against him, and the reason to believe can be that this person has purchased goods from a person. When his premises was raided, he has said that I have supplied goods to this fellow, and he shows chat. These are sufficient reason to believe for that carrying out a arrest of the other person, because the evidence to a prudent man will give an idea. Okay, yes, this person has chatted and given yes and no from his number, so he must be well aware about that. Another example of reason to believe that if there's a person whose factory produces X quantity of goods, and that as per data available in books of accounts and records. Whereas if you tomorrow go and look into the electricity bill of that person, that evidences that there's not X amount, there's 10x amounts of goods being manufactured. That's a difference in variation, because normally with the electricity data, what you can identify, okay, how many hours this factory is running, this commercial consumption is being done, and if this much quantity has to be produced, generally this is the rate of electricity consumption. But at that premises, the electricity consumption is 10x. So if that's the case, then definitely this is a sufficient reason to believe for them to start an arrest or a search exercise. Other examples of reason to believe, if I want to give it, then I would like to take an example. Yeah, that if a person's spending status, if they're a person who has a status where he's continuously traveling to out of India, or alternatively the person is I would say having cars of crores of rupees or having a very lavish lifestyle. But if the same is compared with the income tax return of that person or to the entity to which he is managing the affairs or earning his bread and butter, that does not, I would say, resonate his lifestyle, then definitely that's a sufficient evidence for them to make out a case that okay, this person, the income and the asset mismatch is such a huge, which requires an investigation to be done in this matter, and that's a sufficient reason to believe to carry out a search exercise in the premise of the SSC. So all those examples I am why I'm discussing with you to understand that okay, how these authorities function to make you to get to just let you have an idea that okay, when the authorities wanted to work, what all actions they can take upon. Now, I would be moving forward to a topic. What is a bogus or fake invoice? Because this term is being used, or I would say, canvassed by the news or media publicities a lot. And also, all those tax journals use this term. But whether this term is defined under the law and what does this actually mean? So let me take up the relevant sections by which we can understand what this term is all about. To begin with, I would like to highlight section 132(1)(a). The text of that section is before all of you. And to understand this fake invoicing and other tax evasion measures, we will have a simple reading of these four sections A, B, C, D, because these are the four sections which are treated to be cognizable and non-bailable. And when they are cognizable and non-bailable, it means that a direct arrest can happen of a person, and this power is available with the officer. There's no need to take permission of the court for carrying out the arrest. Now, in all those crimes where this ABCD is there the threshold limit is of 5 crore, that the tax evasion should be of more than implication of 5 crore of rupees. And let's understand what they all say. So let's have a reading of it. It says that whosoever commits any of the following offences, namely, supplies any goods or services for both without issue of any invoice in violation of the provision of the Act or the rules made thereunder with the intent to evade tax. So what we are looking for, we are looking for a person who has supplied goods or services without issue of any invoice to confirm that okay, this person is carrying out this activity, and because of that, if there's a evasion of more than 5 crore, he would be put behind bars. But what this activity is about, now let me take all of you through some examples. I would like to take an example, live example, to by which I can explain this. So there's a city or there's a town named Kishangarh, and that is known in Rajasthan. Near it is near to Ajmer district. That's and hardly that's a distance of 30 kilometers from the Ajmer railway station. But this has a all over India credibility in terms of quality of marble which is available, because that's a kind of I would say trading place wherein the various types of marble blocks are being traded, and there are many industrial units which are there in either selling of marble block or marble tiles or processing thereof, and there are also a lot of export house. Now, what happens at these places? The persons who are interested and willing to make the to build their houses across the country come to this area, and from various traders they purchase the goods. And the problem with these industries is that the individuals who are coming for the purpose of construction of their house, they are actually not they propose that we do not want tax invoices because they are eventually taking it for the purpose of own consumptions. And there's a huge cost involved in terms. So they request them, okay, don't give us the tax invoices. we will pay you cash and will buy goods from them from you. And to various traders, when I inquired upon that, sir, will you try to change this practice? Sir, he said that we even try to change this practice, but the customer doesn't change. And when customer doesn't change, the competitor also doesn't change. So we are ending up doing this type of practice only, that we wanted to sell it in check on disclose that, but I can't do it for the reason that the the businessman who is the buyer who is coming to me, if I am offering him saying that kindly pay taxes or which is applicable, he says sorry, I'm not going to buy it from you, I will buy from someone else. The problem is with the mindset of the buyer, and when that mindset of the buyer is of such a nature that he do not wanted to purchase by paying taxes, he has to end up succumbing himself to the demand of the competitors or the demand of the market. So in those cases, they supply them goods without issue of an invoice. This is a very common way of tax evasion. And I tell you, this exercise is not only in the example of the industry which I have taken, every place. So let me take a very simple example that when we go to the grocery stores, which is a very prominent in certain location, what happens generally, you will find that the grocery store person has a habit that he will say, okay, अच्छा 10 रुपए का मैगी का पैकेट चाहिए ले जाओ, अच्छा 5 किलो चीनी चाहिए ले जाओ. So what he would do, he would just have a simple rough pad on which he will do a total and give you, okay, this much amount you have to pay. So everyone is not like DMart where they have all those systems in place by which every transaction which is moving out there would be invoiced on a live basis. They would just do a simple calculation on notepad and they would give it. Or you can, in every city or in every town, you will find some those kachori samosa guys, or those wherein in the morning they have sale of thousands of rupees on a day, wherein which will eventually be more than 20 lakh rupees if you count on a yearly basis. But all that, there's no billing because it would be hardly 20 rupees, 30 rupees, 40 rupees single piece. And when it totals around, it reaches to a certain limit. So all those all those exercises are there wherein there's a movement of goods without issuance of any invoice. But we need to understand this line. It has two parts. It says with the intent to evade tax. And there's a difference between the example which I have taken for the marble and for this kachori samosa or this grocery person guy, for the reason that in the kachori samosa guy and the grocery, there's no intent to evade tax. Because law permit them that if there's a transaction of lesser than say 200 rupees, then you can make consolidated invoices. So if at the end of the month or end of the day, as per their business practice, if they make out, sorry, if they make out invoices on a consolidation basis, what the law permits them to do, then in that case, they are not having any intent to evade tax. And if that's the case now, they will not fall into the clutches of clause A. But wherein there's a clear-cut intent to evade tax, this and the amount is more than 5 crore, this section empowers them to do a direct arrest. Now, going further with the example of supplying any goods with supplying any services. So this also happens that there are various times the contractors who are having a kind of say 5 to 10 JCBs available with them, or they are the contractors who are engaged in the work of demolition of existing structures. So there's a very common practice in those trades that they come and demolish the houses and they take this amount in cash. Now, because they would have say 10 to 15 cranes available with them or a battery of say 50 laborers available with them, and they would enter into an understanding that okay, if this house has to be demolished, I will demolish this house and I will take away all the debris which is there, and I will pay some amount to you on account of debris. That's a very common practice which happens in the real estate construction industry. So all those people provide services and do not issue any invoices because they actually treat themselves as a supplier of scrap. So they don't raise any invoice in the further transactions also. The selling of the scrap is out of the books. These kind of transactions are covered under this, wherein the person who is supplying the services has not, I would say, shown it in the records and it gets carried out the transaction. Now, once given this example that how the supply of goods and services without issuing invoice and the intent of evasion of taxes there, let me take up, yeah, the second part of it. Now, second part is B and C. 132.1 B and C have to be read together to understand what is fake invoicing is all about. So when you talk about 132.1,
I think sir got disconnected from us.
yeah, there was some technical issues for that. So continuing the discussion. So just a second, let me share the screen also.
I think there is some technical issue, so we are waiting for Rahul sir to again joining us.
Kiraj, whether my screen is appearing?
Yeah, yes, sir, visible.
Yeah, thank you. So continuing the discussion. Sorry for the technical interruption. So, continuing the discussion, 131B and C, both of these sections have to be understood in a manner how the lawmakers have thought it, because fake invoicing term जो है वो यहीं से निकल के आता है. So, when I talk about 132(1)(b), it says that issues any invoice or bill without supply of goods or services or both in violation of the provision of this act or the rules made thereunder, leading to wrongful availment or utilization of input tax credit or refund of tax. Now, here it says that there's a person who is issuing any bill without supply of goods, and there's a person who is availing input tax credit using such invoice or bill referred to in clause B. Now, this B and C have a connection. And why a person will issue an invoice without supply of goods, that is also one thing which one need to understand, so as to understand, okay, how and why and what methodology a tax evader follows in this. So, as I have given you an example wherein I said that there are people who there are people who wanted to construct their houses. What they do, they approach a person who is there in Kishangarh, a trader, saying that please supply me the goods, and I'm not interested in taking the invoice. And I would take these goods as per my own thing. I would move the goods by my own channels and challenges. And at the end of the day, by that movement and by the challenges, that's okay and fine to me. And I will not take the invoice. So the problem with the trader is that he has purchased this block of marble by paying taxes, and there's an input tax credit lying out to him. He processed that block marble into tiles, which has been given to the person who has to build his house. But in the books, if you will go and see, there would be an entry appearing in his opening stock. And that opening stock, when purchased, will give you a certain number of tiles as the clothing stock, but that clothing stock will continue to remain in the book. While it will continue to remain in the book, why? Because there's no invoice which has been made. But physically, if someone goes and compare it, the physical stock will not compare with the books available in the stock. Then what he is bound to do, he's bound to issue an invoice, because he has to clear, he has to make sure that his books and his stock physically gets reconciled with each other. So now he looks for, now these there are persons whom I call brokers. They approach all these that, okay, may I request you to kindly give me an invoice on a particular name of a particular firm, which that broker has made by using fake Aadhaar and fake PAN cards of people, and based upon that, they carry out this exercise. And by having that GST number which has been made by using fake IDs, what they do, they take the credit from that India businessman, saying that please issue an invoice on this number. And what that person does, that they say there's a goods of rupees 1 lakh at 18% tax is being supplied. So 1,18,000 that person will pay in check, and in return they would give them cash of say 1,10,000 or 1,15,000. So 3,000 is the income of the person which it receives, because he has to eventually has to make that invoice. Now what these brokers will do, they get this credit accumulated in their fake numbers which they have created. Now they use this fake ITC which they have accumulated by transferring to those persons who are in need of those bills. Because I tell you, there are a lot of persons in the industry who have purchased the goods on the basis of without having any invoice. So they have purchased the marble blocks illegally from the mines, and when these marble blocks have been illegally purchased and they have to further sell them, and they have to show in their books of accounts, have to cover those marble blocks illegal purchase, what they will do, they will supply them the invoices. So these brokers actually do a matching thing for those persons who have sold the goods in cash and the person who have purchased the goods in cash. So they do a matchmaking kind of thing and earn their margin in between. And this transaction goes for crores of rupees. Now, when I have given you this example of selling the goods, of making an invoice without movement of goods, actually what is being done, the lying input tax credit is being passed on, and the person who is received the goods, what they are doing, they are actually taking credit. So in a same situation, there will be B and C both provisions which will be applicable, and there would be a person who has supplied the goods will be fined guilty under clause B, because he has not supplied the goods in physical, he has just supplied the goods on paper by way of issuing invoice. And the person who has taken the credit, that would be person who will be found guilty of availing a input tax credit without actually receiving the goods. Now, a very interesting question comes up. See, the whether if there's a person whose name and Aadhaar authentication has been done illegally, many times I tell you it is being done without informing that person. Many times it is done by taking that person on. By offering them a bigger amount, because how they do it, the brokers approach, say, all those persons who are from a particular income earning per class. Let's say they might be earning 10,000, 15,000 a month, so they lucrate them by saying that I will give you say 50,000 rupees, or I will give you a lakh rupees if what you do, you come with me. First of all, I would use your Aadhaar to open a bank account, and you have to put your signature. Then you have to give your all login ID, password, and other things to me. And I would take care, and I want you to first help me also in incorporation of a GSTN number by using your Aadhaar authentication. And every month I will pay you 5,000 rupees. If there's a OTP comes, you give it to me, and that's it. So those there are a class of vulnerable class of people in society to whom they approach, and by giving them a lucration of some amount of money, they use their IDs. So they create a kind of shadow entities by using their Aadhaar authentication and other things, and based upon that they create these fake forms. Now I put up a question for all of you. If I say a person has to be put behind bars, who will be put which person will be behind the bars? It will be the person who has as a broker undertaken this transaction, or it would be a person who is basically whose ID has been fraudulently used. So to my understanding, I would always like to say that the person who is availing the input tax credit is actually the mastermind, because he is de facto the controller of the. But argue that I am not a person who was on an amount of force have made to lying statements where they have said that I haven't. Actually, if you consider, then it is the person जिस नाम से वो registration है उस person but on account of circumstantial evidences, what they do, they try to prove that okay, this is not me. This is this is not the person whose identity has been used. It is actually a broker who has managed this entire affair and has taken care of this exercise. So it becomes very important to read these sections in the spirit which they have written, not to go with a little me. For example, I know that there are people who are involved in an exercise wherein what they do, they take these courses from people, they exercise, they export goods by using product and actually
I think there is a technical issue again, so let's wait for sir to join us again.
some network issues there, Kunal, what I mean, because earlier it was well, I don't know. Yes. Yeah, continuing it further. So I would like to explain with one of the example where even they try to take refund of this fake invoicing and how they do it. there is a person who has collected the input tax credit. Now, what he does, he approaches the persons who wanted to export goods at a lesser billing of price. And then he said that, okay, I would make sure that your goods cross outside the country, and at a X price they send it out of the country, and when that amount comes, give it to those persons. But during this process, what they do, they actually try to take refund of all the amount which they have collected in their input tax budget by way of taking bills from invoices. And how this exercise is carried out is by doing an over evaluation of the goods. I will not much detail on that, but this is a methodology. If you really interested, there is a case which happened in the state of Delhi, wherein there was a group of people who were just doing overvaluation of goods at the very time they were earning payment from the department. They were taking 50 minutes of overvaluing goods, and at the end of the day, they were using all this on the basis of paper trails. Example I can give with respect to issues of fake invoice to the understanding of the audience at large. They are government bids, I tell you. So many times people are working for the government project. And when they are working for the government projects, what is that they are starting, I would say the cash payment which has different in that transaction. So how they do it for that purpose, what they do, they put up fake invoices, and by using those fake invoices, what they do, they draw cash from the system. And this money, because say a contract of say 100 crores being awarded to a contractor, and there's a kick-off benefit of 5% which has to be given. So how they do, I will just stop my video. There will be some challenge. Yes. Hmm. Yes. So there are various times the government contracts which I was giving an example. There are kickbacks which have to be given to the bureaucrats. So what they do, they approach entities who are engaged in giving fake invoices. They would give them an expenditure bill of 5 crore, and in lieu of that, they would return them 4.95 crores of cash. Now, this cash goes on to the system of has to be eventually given. Now, this is an example which I'm sharing with you again has come out on account of fiction and account of because in government departments you cannot have persons other by way of cash. It has to be in the form of checks only, the system, and it has to be built system. But they are not going to take the credit. So by this way, they make by it, cash is the end converted in cash and benefits are being offered. So all these become part of the system for the purpose of invoice. Now, if you talk about, if one needs to understand, this is a kind of a white collar crime, and this white collar crime is done to earn a very minimal benefits and which are being passed on to different sectors of the society, and the benefit and advantage is being achieved in this manner. Uh, uh, yes, I would just take up one or two more points, even though I have covered most of them which are given there. So, in this, there's a layering of entities to hide the actual beneficiary also. What is this? Many times they do it by way of having a layer of say 3 to 4 entities before giving eventually a bill to a trader. They pass it on like this, that okay, they purchase it from the state of Agra or UP at the city of Agra, then they supply it to an entity which is in Lucknow, then they would pass it on to an entity in the state of Rajasthan in Jaipur, and then they again pass it on to some entity in Assam, and then they would get it back to the place where it has to be. So with these all chains, what happens, it becomes very difficult to find out that okay, where actually beneficiary is setting up. So this is also happens a lot number of times in carrying out this transaction. Now, once given this background, earlier as I have explained that it was unable to, an entity is unable, the government departments were unable to find out because there was a lot of challenge in terms of cross borders or cross state jurisdictions which happens in this transaction. In this, okay, let me. Yeah, this is again a very interesting fact which I want to take up. This is circular trading, what it is called. What this circular trading is all about, and this is a system which is being perpetuated from the time, I would say, the sales tax design was there. Not even VAT, even prior to VAT, the sales tax design was there. This methodology is very common being followed. And what is this methodology and what this term is all about? So, say there is a company which has a listed status, or there's a company which has been debts from the bank, and all those bank commitments are on the basis that you should have a certain amount of turnover in a year. If you don't have that certain amount of turnover in a year, then they would reduce your banking limits. Or there is an alternate. There are cases where there are companies who are in the listed on the stock markets and they had a certain value, and this value upon their turnover. So when they have these value on the basis of certain turnover, then what happens that because of that turnover, what they have to do, they have to keep that turnover alive. If that turnover is not there, there's going to be a lot of problem to them because their share market will come down, or what will happen, the government will reduce their or the banks will reduce their sanction limits. So to maintain that, they enter into this traditional circular trading. And what they do, they create various entities. And when they create various entities, what they do, they pass on those entities the invoices, and how they do those invoices. That there's an entity X that bill to entity Y, then that to entity Y bill to entity Z, and that entity Z again bill to entity X. In this way, there's, and at every stage they do a little amount of value addition. On this value addition, even though income tax is payable, but eventually what they are able to do by doing this paper trading, what they are able to inflate turnover of the main them to take care of what, and then take care of the turnover which they are reporting in their financial statement. But effectively, there is no tax evasion in terms of. But if you look at the bank, there is a movement with, if there is a transaction of sale without actual movement of goods, then that would lead to the exercise of circulating, and there would be a problem. And they're happy to pay income taxes. Why? Because they're happy to pay income taxes, because by that they are actually able to perpetuate the problem which is there in the company. Tax on the valuation part, but they are eventually able to serve the purpose. So this is also happens on a very in companies to achieve the requisite number of turnover. However, that directly comes and hit under the section 132(1)(b). Now, this is a topic which I want to discuss. This with respect to clause D of 121. It talks about there's a person who collects any amount as tax but fails to pay the same to the government beyond a period of 3 months from the date of such dispute. I would like to explain this with some example. So we all seen all those movies when we are in the places, and when we go and attend those places, what we do is that places issue invoices and collect taxes from you, and they would first ask you that okay, whether you wanted to pay by way of a card or by UPI or a cash. If you will say that cash, they would make sure that separate bill book. Why? So I tell you what they do. They on the face of the invoice they will show that they are paying taxes. They are collecting taxes from you for say there's a loan 1500 you have taken or 2000 you have taken on 80 they will charge the tax and will collect it from you. But on the back end, what they do is through that invoice and because they have taken money in cash that's not been accounted for in their bank accounts, so they would throw away that invoice or that bill book and they would siphon off that amount of 18%. So here what they are doing, they are collecting any amount but they're failing very the government, so they are paying it because of that they are paying tax. Again, one of the prominent is coaching industry. So we all know that in commercial coaching, the tax of 18% is applicable. Now, there have been searches during the service tax time, also in the GST time, various coaching centers across the country, where what kind of practice they used to follow. For say, if you pay this in cash, they would give you an invoice. But actually, what they are doing, they would at the back end, they will just uh, that they are collecting cash. So the department carried out investigation searches and how they were able to find it because they took up the data structures which was being gained to market attendance and when compared it with the actual fees which has been shown in the books of accounts, they were able to find out that difference because that was in a batch or say student enrolled, however, you go and look, you will find out that they have declared this GST amount only of 450. Of the 50 invoices, 50 students who are paid in cash, they have actually deleted the data. But the presence, they have not been able to, I would say, taken care of the fact that the attendance register the also gets with respect to those 50 also gets removed. That's not the case. So also actually okay, they are wherein they have deleted the invoices and have they put the amount with them. So these kind of practices are covered in clause 132.1d. One more example I would like to give of 132d, and again I would like the audience to ask a question from themselves that okay whether that would something which is eventually leads to the application. So, given if there is a businessman which has a huge amount of input tax credit available, and because of availability of input tax credit, because they have done an expansion of, and they have capital goods available with them, what they do, they have for about 3 months. Because say that okay, what we have this input tax and this input tax credit we set off against our output liability, and on based upon our output liability, we file for it. So what these people do is instead of filing of their return, they defer it. And when they defer, it goes for a period of say 3 to 4 months. Now, when so then possibly say they will file for 1 month and then later you had a period of 3 to 4 months, which if you don't file, then your registration suspended. All those things is there. But let's put it very simple. If whether provisions are applicable across D. The language of the D is wherein the department is interpreted in one of the case which I am aware of. They've interpreted it saying that if I have purchased, collect, taken input tax credit and I have supplied, and what I have done, I have collected that amount from the persons. But what I have and I have carried forward for say 3 months. Actually, I have taken the money and I have not paid it to the government coffers because the payment to the government happens when I file my return and I do a set off. Set off what? Set off my say my inputs. And if that set off has not been done on a monthly basis, then I have actually collected the amount, I have not paid it to the government. This is what I have done. When I have done this, I'm actually falling under clause 132(1)(d). That's an interpretation taken by the government officials. There was one of the matter we went and explained to them, "See, you cannot have this interpretation because it is only non-reporting of the transaction for the reason that there was sufficient accumulation available. You can't say that person has to pay that taxes. That money is just lying with you, and what is required, that money is required to be set off at the portal. That is the only exercise which is required to be done. When that is the case, you can't say that person that okay, you have not paid the taxes. That is only a if a person is returned now, but you can't that the person has you can also prosecute. So that the commissioner was convinced and he is not being able to in those cases also it can be triggered upon. But the idea and intent of this law is very clear, and this is very prominent in service industry because see services there is very easy that you can collect an amount and later on you can delete the I would say invoice and there will not be any trace. But this is not much possible in case of the goods because in terms of goods, they actually come up with a trail. With the goods, there is a physical movement. With the services, if you supply it and tomorrow you take it and just throw it away, say I go to a certain place and I carry out an audit exercise, being a chartered accountant, and I eventually take cash from that person, or I take say 5 rupees cash and 5 rupees in check. Then it is impossible for any person to identify value because that's how the valuation of things move on. It's I've just taken an example to not to actually need to be implemented, but I would say being intangible in nature, the trail can be deleted in a very easy manner. So service sector we prove this clause B type of exercise which happens. So this is something that has to be taken care of. Now I'm on a very important topic. No arrest before completion of adjudication. This is not to be because last 15 minutes I would be more deliberating upon this. Post that if there's any questions that we can take about this, or I would just be resting after that. But I wanted to give an idea of this. So no arrest before completion of adjudication. This is very important for us to understand. In GST law, there are two type of exercise which are being done by the department these days. One exercise is wherein they carry out a kind of search, and based upon that, if they are able to find out sufficient evidences, and they carry out an arrest, and the prosecution is launched in the criminal courts. This is one set of thing, but there is another set of things that they have to collect that amount from that person by way of issuing a show cause notice. Because see, in all these matters, unless there is no tax evasion, there is no actual, I would say, withdrawal of money from the system, you cannot hold a person guilty. Now, it's very important to understand that are they trying to put a cart before an horse. That's a phrase which I have not made. That's a phrase in one of the judgment which has been given by Telangana High Court, and now that is pending at Supreme Court. And in that also, hearing has been done, and the order is reserved. What they are trying to say that what is happening in all these matters? In all these matters, they are doing adjudication even prior later on. There is no identification of the person who has actually taken out the amount, and that would be done only once the show cause notice is there and an order is passed into. Without carrying out that exercise, they are directly jumping to the conclusion on launching the prosecution. That's not correct. You need to first completely give a show cause notice, do the adjudication exercise, and post that you will find that okay, this amount has been because when I said that a 5 crore amount been evaded, how that would be identified? That can be identified only by issuing a show cause notice and reaching to the eventual conclusion. If you do not conclude that exercise and you just go on with the exercise of directly initiating the prosecution, that is not correct. Tomorrow you may find out that this person is not involved. The recovery cannot be made from that person. So this is incorrect. So this no arrest before completion of adjudication is a very important argument which I have highlighted all these three judgments before you of various courts, wherein this proposition was discussed in very detail. wherein it was highlighted that how a person can be held guilty even before issuing a show cause notice by the department. The first one is Make My Trip Limited versus Union of India. That's a 2016 Delhi High Court judgment, later on confirmed also by Supreme Court. Therein, the question which was being examined was very clear that in service tax, they have given a clear cut finding in the case of Make My Trip that you are trying to do the recovery exercise even without issuing a show cause notice. Because if you have initiated the prosecution, that means that you have reached to a conclusion. Now the department is only merely a kind of, I would say, a formality, because you yourself lost the prosecution, you have reached to a conclusion, you are without giving an apology. Now herein you will first adjudicate a show cause notice and you find that there is a tax evasion, then you try to find out a person, do prosecution. That is up to the set of activities in which it has to be done. So let's see how the things will go on. Still, this question is decided by Honorable Supreme Court, because in Jayachandra Roy's the Madras High Court, and now this is pending at Supreme Court. How the things will turn out in future, we will see. Yeah, this is also very important. Relief in case of default. Again, why I am highlighting this, because many times it happens when the advisory comes to you that in what is the manner in which it can be addressed. So there's a matter of, in the matter of C Pradeep, Honorable Supreme Court. So we all know that under GST law, if you deposit 10% of the amount of tax, then you can fight the matter at the appellate level, and there's an automatic stay. And when there's a stay on the recovery of the amount, and it is still has to be finally attained a finality over a period of time, once it reaches to the Supreme Court, because that's the apex court where that's the Supreme Court, that's the final authority will give any conclusion to the matter in terms of GST law. You can argue that matter, you can contend that matter or the demand which is there. Now, if at depositing 10% that relief is available, then how the prosecution can be launched at this stage? So in all those financial crime, first you have to identify that, okay, this once this attain a finality, then only you can initiate the prosecution thing. That's the view which is coming up for one of the school of thoughts. So I don't know how this would be taken up by the courts at the Supreme Court level, but to all those who be advising on that should be aware that by merely depositing 10%, the Supreme Court has granted relief in one of the matter, which can also be advised if there is any such matters coming to. Now, and then this is very important for us for our discussion, because what is the position of professionals in all this? I have, during the starting of my presentation, has discussed a little upon that. Okay, there are certain of my professional brothers who have also been, I would say, be questioned on account of all these GST evasions and other things, and they have been examples where in arrest two of them I have handled on my own. So what have happened in all those matters? Let's understand it like this. So, being a professional, what is our duty? That if there's a person who approaches us and says that you are required to file our returns and you are required to maintain accounts, or you are required to maintain invoices for us, we would like to have your accounting services as well as services for filing of returns and compliances. Now, while doing that activity, one of the allegations which was casted on the professional, that see, all those records and accounts, all those tallies are being maintained at your place, and accordingly you are the one who is involved in this making of invoices. Was the allegation which came out, to which we very strongly contended that, see, you can't blame a professional for the same, because yes, even though records, even though account books, even though the returns all were available at the place of the chartered accountant's office, but you need to understand what role he is playing. Being a professional, what is duty? His duty is to do provide those services, and when these services are being provided for that, these records data has to be come at my office. So if those records and data are lying at my office, doesn't mean that I am the one who has created this. I can give you the detail of the person who has carried out this transaction. You go and find out that person and do this requisite exercise. Here, I always advise my professional friends Why becoming premium? Because in that case, one of the unfortunate thing happened that the chartered accountant, for the purpose of ease, has used the his own mobile number and email IDs to create the data on the GST. And he said that it would be the person who came requested that even though that's the name of other person, but for the purpose of the receiving the OTP, you kindly you give your email ID. That would be easy for you. There would not be any problem in asking again and again. This is a very, I would say, negligent step taken by the profession, because we should be very cautious. As you need to understand that under the Information Technology Act, when you are giving an confirmation to any data by way of an OTP, it eventually that you are confirming that this data is correct and valid. You cannot do it behalf of anyone else. You can't allow them to use your a mobile number for that purpose. Now, even the system has been become so robust that they are trying to relate it with the Aadhaar numbers, Aadhaar OTP numbers only, and based upon that, or there are many times when the DSC is very commonly available at the office of the chartered accountant, where they just put up that DSC and based upon that. So DSC is also very important document. We should first take an if even otherwise it is coming to us for the purpose of carrying out this exercise, then we should take an confirmation from that person that okay, he is giving this limited purpose, and based upon that only to carry out the activity and exercise. So I suggest to all the professions to first of all take an undertaking. If you are having any books of accounts, tallies, or DSCs at the client place, to take an authorization that by a valid letter and by having a valid KYC of that person available in your record, that he has given you with his consent. It is not you who has taken it, because in those cases the problem was there was no proper engagement letter, EL, what we call it, was available with the associate. And when that EL was not available, it was easy for the department to say that, okay, why you are blaming now someone else? It is you who is managing in the entire set of affairs. So, in all those matters, what I advise you should have a proper engagement letter based upon which you can take a view. Okay, this is the document which you can go to the authorities, okay, based upon which these documents are being available. The work matters which wherein a professional was involved, and that was taken up by Punjab and Haryana High Court in the matter of Akhil Krishna Logo, wherein the court, after listing both the parties, said very specifically that chartered accountants who had filed returns or otherwise assisted in business but are not beneficiary or part of it, merely on the basis of statement without any corroborative evidence linking the profession with an alleged offence, should be avoided. So this finding is very important, that we should keep a arm length distance while doing any kind of activity to any person. It may be a person who might be you are doing, who is your client from 10 years, 15 years, but still, I would always say to maintain the distance between what a professional should have with the clientele. Because if they don't do it now, they may end up problems on account of frivolous activity which the associate is doing. And all those friends who are aware of that, yes, the files maintaining is actually is a problem, or they are not able to take the client. I would say that don't go with the small benefits which they may offer you. Just leave that while work on an immediate basis, because in the longer term now, the responsibilities of the chartered accountants by certifying any books of accounts and other things is being increasing manifold. And when I say manifold, the department, or whether it's ROC department or other departments, they are also coming very heavily on us. So we should be very cautious while doing this kind of activity, and we should do a proper KYC before addressing these concerning issues. So that would be my advice. Where even though this judgment is there, but this judgment gives immunity only in those cases we are able to prove that we are not beneficiary, or we are not in hand in glove with the person who has committed the fraud. So this requires to be proved before any kind of, I would say, expecting immunity from the courts. So for that, it is necessary that you should maintain an arm length distance and do your, I would say, paperwork or engagement letter exercise in a very thorough manner. Now, I would just discuss upon certain new measures which have been implemented by the government to take care of this fake invoicing things. So, as you all know now, there are registrations which are Aadhaar based, and when this Aadhaar based registrations are there, that actually has been able to help that, because in the starting when the GST was implemented, the registration was not Aadhaar based. One can just simply on the basis of putting up certain rent dates and basic documents information can carry out this exercise. Now they are saying that every person who is either the director of the company or the sole proprietor or the partner has to get his Aadhaar authentication. This is helping them to, I would say, remove all those entities from the system which have not done the Aadhaar authentication. This has come also a very important step that they are blocked credit which cannot if there's a credit which is not in the earlier times. I remember when the GST was implemented 17, 18, 18, 19, 19, 20, this GSTR 2A system was not there, and this has been taken this has been very advantageously used by various entities or various these brokers. What they do that without having a purchase invoice based upon only and only the GSTR 3B returns, they put that data and on that data they take the credit. They were not doing any kind of matching with GSTR 2, which eventually lead them to pass on the benefits of crores of rupees because there was no matching available with respect to the supplies actually made to them. But now with this robust system of GSTR 2A, if there is any mismatch that is highlighted within the very next month and that leads to a problem. So this is a very good welcoming step, and that's what I was saying about that if you have a technology connection, because when you link the two dealers who are doing B2 based transaction on the GST portal, that's very easy for them to find it out. This scrutiny of refunds in case where Sions are breached, this is also very important. So I tell you, what is being done in these matters that there's a standard input output norms in place for every trade and business. When these standard input output norms are in place for every trade and business, what is required that the exercise should be carried out in a very efficient manner while taking refunds, because what they do, they compare that, okay, if you are saying that this much product have been exported by you by using X amount of raw material, then we will compare it with standard input output norms which is available. And if this standard output norm doesn't matches, then what we would do, we would initiate a exercise of saying that, okay, this standard input output norm is thing. So yes, there is a problem with your thing, and we need to scrutinize. And I tell you, this is also very important for any business to understand that yeah, they should, and this is also prudent that if you are in a particular line of business and normally there's a deviation of 1 or 2% on account of your efficiency, that's okay. But the department being able to find out that there have been a difference of say more than 20 to 30% in the production of X person, Y person. And if that is the case, then definitely there is something which requires an investigation. So this list of standard input output norms, when released by the department by help of trade and industry, this is also becoming a very helping hand for them. EV bill, I have already explained that how this EV bill mechanism can help in tracing the movement of the goods on a live basis and find out, okay, what kind of tax evasion being done. Next is inspection by means of, okay, this is also very important section which I wanted to highlight. Many people might not be aware of. So this is a section wherein the powers has been given to the GST officers. What they can do, they can go to the market, they can go and purchase a transaction, purchase an goods from you, and they can keep that bill on your in their records, and they would wait for you to file your return at the end of the month. And if at the end of the month you are not showing that invoice in your returns, then they can catch hold you saying that you are doing tax evasions. So this section, and if eventually you show it, then they can say you that kindly return us our money. This was only a testing which we are doing for it, kindly you can cancel this invoice. So this type of provision is available in the law to check the tax evasion. So I have seen a department doing live reikis wherein they have a kind of tip that, okay, this person is involved in doing clandestine removal or doing in any kind of activity, they are not paying taxes. So this is also been very common, which I've been able to see. Prevention of Money Laundering Act, this is also going in the pipeline that tomorrow it may happen so that the GST may become a schedule offense. Just to give you a background on the PMLA, what happens? The PMLA, there are schedule offenses, and if those schedule offenses happens, then the enforcement director has the power to investigate the matter. This PMLA law, they are looking for to make this also the GST law also as a part of the schedule of it. And why so? Because they are understanding that by way of GST only, what they are doing by using the GST invoices or GST data or the GST methodology, they are creating they are doing layering of money, or they are laundering the money. So they are saying that we are going to make GST also a schedule offense. And a few days past, you might have heard that the GST have been made mandated that they have to share all that data with the PMLA authority. So by this, what has happened that the GST authorities have to share this with their system, their data with the PML authorities. And when that happens, so PMLA for the authorities who are in the enforcement directorate and doing investigation of PMLA, they can very well identify that okay, how this person has done the GST evasion, and eventually it has laundered the money. Next is the Rule 36(4) requirement of claiming credit. I will not deliberate much on this. This also I've covered. Now, finally, I'm on certain judgments. There are one or two judgments which I would like to discuss with all of you before ending up my presentation. So, there is one judgment which I have highlighted herein. So, this judgment talks about wherein there was a buyer and supplier. Because this judgment, why I'm discussing with you, it is being used by me in various kind of litigations which are being also being contested at department level or high court level. Many times what happens, there are traders in business, wherein these traders, what they do, these traders have actually purchased goods from those persons who have at the back end taken some fake invoices. Now the department comes to them and say that, and it may happen though the persons from whom they have purchased the goods, they are not available, or better to say, the brokers have flew away, or they are brokers. What they do, they purchase the goods from some place, take invoice from some, and accordingly supply the goods. And later on, these businessmen found get a notice from the department that the parties from whom you have purchased are no more in existence. So in all those cases, this judgment comes as a savior, because this judgment helps in making up an argument. First of all, the day when I have purchased, and if this person was registered on the portal, I don't have any other manner to find out that whether this person has, if I can prove that I have paid taxes to them, I don't have a mechanism by which I can establish, okay, this person has not paid the taxes, or this person has deposited the amount to you. I cannot prove it. So because of that, the position comes in a very clear cut manner that okay, if you by the records it is established that the department, instead of first catching hold the supplier, has directly come on the receiver. This cannot be done. They first need to go to the supplier of the goods, find out whether that person exists or not, or how this person, even though the taxes has been paid to him, has not paid it to paid it to the government, and they first try to recover it from the supplier. And if they're not able to do it from the supplier, then only they come to the receiver. So many times when the department directly come to the receivers, this judgment can be of great help in contesting, and it has been successfully being done at various courts also. And this one of the matter, yeah. Yes. So this provision, even though that's a judgment of August 2021, but I would like to highlight that also for your help. So what department is doing these days, they are using a power given under clause 86 capital A regarding blocking of electronic credit ledger. And how they do, let me tell you. Say I am a dealer. If I have purchased from some person any goods for say 2 years back or 3 years back, and department carried out an investigation, and they are able to see that okay, this the person to who has supplied to me has some activities wherein there's some scrupulous thing being done. So they initiate block on my electronic credit ledger. And why that blocking? Because 86 capital A entitles them. Now there's a very simple question which has come to me, that sir, the transaction which they are investigating is of 3 years back, and they are right now blocking my electronic credit ledger. So whether this provision is for blocking the current credit or the past credit, or this is a recovery even before show cause notice. So we took up this question for Honorable High Court, and a very important thing came out from the judgment. The court said that, see, this power to block the credit was given as a preventive measure to the investigation team to do it on the spot. Because if they find out that, okay, this person has issued some fake invoicing and that is lying in someone else's account, so what they can do, they can issue a notice and can block that amount for further using it. But if you are investigating a matter which is 3-year old and now you are issuing directly this, it is using this power of 86A and issuing blocking of credit, this is actually you are recovering an amount from a person. This is not you are, I would say, doing a preventive exercise. The court said that if the person is able to prove this electronic credit ledger does not belongs to those invoices. Alternatively, he is able to prove that all the documents are available by which he can show it to the authority that, okay, all these transactions were genuine. So he should not be put to a problem and this recovery should be initiated. So this is a very important thing which has been come out through this judgment, and again a very helpful thing for all those who are contesting these kind of matters for future things. So with this, I would rest. Thank you so much. I would be sharing this PPT with the committee. They will have a kind of circulation and being herein to address the audience at large. Over to you, Khemraj. Thank you.
Thank you, sir, for your valuable inputs and for sharing your knowledge about this topic on GST. I can say there is no question because you have explained in detail every topic and every aspect of this topic. So right now there is no question about that. Uh, and it's our honor that you are in this platform to share your valuable knowledge and giving your valuable time in this peak time of our practice. So thank you so much, sir. And thank you so much for everyone joining this webinar. Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you, Khemraj. Thank you. Take care. Bye.